Yeah, so for me, music is definitely a very spiritual practice. It's a way that I stay grounded. It's a way that I kind of keep things in perspective in difficult times and find solace and comfort and connection when times are difficult, and times have certainly been difficult lately in the world, from Gaza to the Congo to Sudan to India, with sort of rising authoritarianism there as well, and most certainly here at home, a lot of things to be concerned about. A few years into the Trump administration, a few years into sort of rising fascism in various parts of the world, about 2018. I started finding myself diving back into the Sikh musical tradition, really just to sort of like, I think a lot of us turn to spirituality in difficult times where we're trying to make sense of the world, where we're trying to understand how things could be as they are, right? We remain steadfast in our struggles for dignity and respect and justice. And so that's what Chardi Kala is all about, right? So it is a positive mindset. It is a sense of optimism and hope, but not just arbitrarily, right? It's this understanding that without hope, uh, we have nothing, right? Like we cannot continue as human beings on this planet, hoping to live in dignity and hoping to stand up for one another without hope, without that Jardikala spirit.
And Staten Islander News is here today with Sonny Singh. His music celebrates the beauty and vibrancy of Punjabi and Sikh culture. Simultaneously spiritual and rebellious, Sonny Singh's music is a reminder that hope, love, and devotion are crucial to our struggles and our collective survival. An original member and trumpeter-singer in Bhangra brass band Red Bharat, Sonny released his first solo album, 22, entitled Chardi Kala, the Sikh concept of revolutionary eternal optimism. As Live Mint says, Singh has done that rarest of rare things as a musician. He has actually charted new ground, pushing the idea of South Asian fusion music down a new, previously unexplored side path. So good morning, Sonny, and it's great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good morning. Great to be here.
So can you tell us about how you got started playing music?
Yeah, so music for me, as a child of immigrants and as a Sikh, actually started in the devotional realm, learning some basic harmonium, which is sort of a pump keyboard instrument, and tabla, which are South Asian hand drums, playing kirtan, or otherwise known as Sikh devotional music. So I would go to these Sikh camps once a year or so in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I grew up, and would learn these beautiful devotional songs. Music is a really important part of sort of worship, prayer, community building in the Sikh community. It's one of the sort of main ways that we come together to worship and be together and connect to something greater than ourselves. And so that's actually how I first started playing music. It was pretty casual. I didn't even really think of it as music. I just thought of it as like something we did at Sikh camp. And then when I was 9 years old in the fifth grade, I kind of arbitrarily joined school band and picked the trumpet pretty randomly. I don't have any musicians in my family. So it was just sort of a lot of kids in my school, in public school I was going to in Charlotte, joined band or orchestra, and I joined band, started playing the trumpet, and one thing led to another over the years.
Oh, awesome. And then how would you characterize your musical style?
So a lot of the music I make now, I would characterize as Punjabi and Sikh anthems of hope. So uplifting myself, uplifting the spirit of the audience is a huge goal of my music, and one of the ways that I do that is by sort of channeling a lot of ancestral wisdom from my Punjabi and Sikh ancestors through, in many cases, sacred poetry, in many cases, revolutionary or political poetry that's been around for hundreds of years, and sort of putting my own spin on interpreting them musically in a very non-traditional way. So the music sounds it sounds South Asian, it sounds Punjabi, it sounds Indian in many ways, but it also sounds like a lot of other things. It sounds like reggae and ska. It sounds like cumbia or mariachi. It sounds like funk. It sounds like rock. It sounds like jazz. So all the influences that kind of have shaped me as somebody who's came of age in New York City. I've been living here for almost 21 years. By this summer, it'll be 21 years. So that's, I think, very apparent in the way my music sounds.
Oh, awesome. So my next question was, how did you connect with the Lincoln Center?
Yeah, I've been a fan of Lincoln Center for a long time, and have played at Lincoln Center for various summer festivals several times before with a band called Red Barath that I'm an original member of since 2008. So there's a long-standing relationship there. I've known the artistic director Shanta Take for a long time. And they reached out about playing India Week at Summer for the City this summer several months back, and I was really excited about being a part of it.
Oh, that's awesome. And can you tell us about how your spirituality influences your music?
Yeah, so for me, music is definitely a very spiritual practice. It's a way that I stay grounded. It's a way that I kind of keep things in perspective in difficult times, and find solace and comfort and connection when times are difficult, and times have certainly been difficult lately in the world, from Gaza to the Congo to Sudan to India, with sort of rising authoritarianism there as well, and most certainly here at home, a lot of things to be concerned about in the U.S. too. And so several years back, I was talking about how my first musical outlet was Sikh devotional music. For most of my career as a professional musician, that was sort of shelved. That wasn't a part of my musical, what I was putting out into the world, or even what I was spending time at home playing. But a few years ago, a few years into the Trump administration, a few years into sort of rising fascism in various parts of the world, about 2018, I started finding myself diving back into the Sikh musical tradition, really just to sort of I think a lot of us turn to spirituality in difficult times, where we're trying to make sense of the world, where we're trying to understand how things could be as they are. And I started digging into this sacred poetry, which in many cases was written in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. So really old poetry. And finding that the meaning is so relevant for what's going on in our world today, right? My ancestors have lived through apocalyptic times and offer a lot of wisdom for the times we're living in today. And so eventually I started composing around some of these poems, and that gave birth to my first album, Chardi in 2022. And now I'm actually finishing up my second album, which will be coming out this fall.
Oh, awesome. Can you please tell us about Chardi Kala, which is the Sikh concept of revolutionary eternal optimism?
Yeah, so Chardi is the name of my first album and the title track of that album, and it's really this idea that even in the darkest of times, the toughest of days, we have an obligation to ourselves, to each other, to the divine, to remain in high spirits. And so this is ancestral practice and wisdom from the Sikh community, who's certainly been through a lot, faced sort of genocidal campaigns at various times in history, been the target of a whole lot of discrimination and violence. And nevertheless, this idea that as Sikhs, we walk with our heads held up high, right? We remain steadfast in our struggles for dignity and respect and justice. And so that's what Chardikala is all about, right? So it is a positive mindset. It is a sense of optimism and hope, but not just arbitrarily, right? It's this understanding that without hope, uh, we have nothing, right? Like we cannot continue as human beings on this planet, hoping to live in dignity and hoping to stand up for one another without hope, without that Jardikala spirit, right? And so that's how I see it. It's very relevant to everything going on today because there's so many reasons to feel despair, and it's that reminder that if we sort of succumb to despair, we're really giving up on each other, right? We're giving up on oppressed and occupied people all over the world. We're giving up on people who are suffering. And so we have to remain determined. We have to remain steadfast. And so I try to embody that spirit in my music.
Oh, wow. Okay.
बागी है नाम अपना sembrando la semilla el suelo está temblando la tierra es libertad libertad oh libertad la tierra es libertad.
Can you tell us about your time working with Will Dog Abers of Ozomatli?
Yeah, so Will Dog, Ozomatli is an incredible band from LA. They've won multiple Grammys. They've been around since the '90s, and were one of my favorite bands as I was coming up in my teenage years and 20s, and are still one of my favorite bands. Will Dog is the bass player and founder of Ozomatli, and he produced my first album, Jardikala. It was a really beautiful collaborative process where he brought just so much life to my music and to these very important words on the album that really precede all of us. And yeah, still a really dear friend. He didn't produce my new album, but he was involved in a few of the tracks and continues to be a dear friend and musical influence.
Oh, wonderful. And can you please tell us about some of the styles that you use in your music?
Yeah, so I really struggle with sort of genre labels for music, and it's hard to put my music in a genre label box. And I'd say a lot of the music that I listen to and that has inspired me is reflected in the music that I make. So you'll hear, I'm a trumpet player, of course, and so you'll hear a lot of trumpet-driven melodies. So some people automatically think jazz when they hear trumpet. That's probably more implied than explicit, but there's certainly a lot of improvisation in the live show. So you hear some of that influence. You definitely hear some rock and roll. There's electric guitar on a lot of my music and heavy rhythms at times. You hear a lot of funk, sort of groovy music. You hear a lot of ska and reggae, which are styles that really shaped me as I was coming up. And then most certainly Punjabi and other sort of South Asian musical forms. You'll hear it rhythmically in instruments like tabla and dhol that are on a lot of my tracks, as well as instruments like the harmonium, which is a sort of pump keyboard instrument, and also a lot of the melodic sort of sensibilities. I think people will hear a sort of South Asian and or Punjabi more specifically sound. So it's a lot of things. It's borderless, genreless in many ways, but of course, a lot of things influence it.
Okay, great. Now, you had mentioned before that you have performed at Lincoln Center before. Have you performed at their actual Summer in the City festivals in the past?
No, I haven't performed at Summer for the City. I think that's a newer festival, if I'm not mistaken. But I've performed a couple of times at Lincoln Center's Out of Doors festival, which used to happen out there in the square several years back.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
I know that they're actually making a lot of changes to Lincoln Center. There was like an entranceway that they're going to be redoing, and they're going to have like some bee hotels and bee bunkers there and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty awesome too.
Mhm.
And what are you most excited about regarding your upcoming performance at Lincoln Center?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the show on July 11th at Lincoln Center. I think one of the things I'm most excited about is just reaching some new audiences. Lincoln Center is a hub for so many communities in New York City. I'm Brooklyn based, so coming to the Upper West Side and reaching a swath of folks who aren't yet familiar with my music is probably what I'm most excited about. Seeing how it resonates with them, seeing what they connect with, is something I'm really eager to see.
Awesome. And what is most important to you that your music conveys to your audience? What do you want them to walk away with from your performances?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think for me, what I want my audiences to walk away with really comes back to this central concept of Chardi, this idea of eternal optimism and hope. I want my audiences to leave feeling inspired and hopeful. And that's how I want myself to feel leaving my performances as well. I think the music that I make is as much for me as it is for audiences. And so I want us all to collectively feel inspired and uplifted by this ancestral wisdom and our musical sort of renditions of it, and that being something that sticks with us, right, and informs the way that we move forward, whether that's getting involved in activism, whether that's involved in just treating people with more empathy and respect, whether that is simply feeling less despair in these times in the world. I think these would all be hugely successful measures that my music is doing what I hope it does.
Fantastic. And a couple of the other questions that I had was some of your social justice work.
Yeah.
And I know that you went to I don't remember the school for social justice. So you actually have like a degree in that.
Yeah.
So can you please detail some of the issues that you deal with in your workshops on anti-oppression and other social justice issues?
Yeah, for sure. So facilitation of workshops, trainings, seminars, and the like, connected to things like race, class, gender, sexuality, religious oppression, all of these isms. That's a really big part of my work, and I intersect these issues with my music as much as possible as well. So really from when I was a teenager, I've been pretty deeply involved in this work, and so yeah, so a lot of the work is about learning and practicing having honest and explicit conversations about things like racism, sexism, and homophobia. Sometimes in terms of sort of like how do they impact our workplaces, how do they impact our neighborhoods, how do they impact our communities, how do they impact our bands and musical spaces, right? And really helping individuals and organizations move towards the kind of change that they want to see. And then quite often I bring in music into these spaces as well. If I'm asked to, speak on an issue like this at a conference, I'll weave in some of my music as well, because that's another way to make people really so sort of bring it home on a more emotional level.
Okay, awesome. And what do you see as the most important issue or issues facing our world today?
That's a big one. A lot. Sorry, ambulance. I'll let that pass. I mean, I think at a more macro level, I would say uh, there is far too much hierarchy in our world. You know, a few people that have a whole lot of power, a whole lot of wealth, uh, in many cases, a whole lot of in many cases a whole lot of bombs and guns and military equipment, right? And 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 this results in so much exploitation and oppression and suffering. And so for me, making our world increasingly democratic, increasingly horizontal, giving, you know, spreading power around, is something that I think would really benefit humanity in a pretty profound way.
Okay. And how have you focused on meeting these challenges in the workshops and trainings that you conduct?
You know, I think if we're talking about issues like racism and sexism, we're talking about power. We're ultimately talking about how to shift power, how to share power, how to undo harms of historical oppression that continues today. And so, yeah, in any sort of social justice work that I do, power is one of the sort of primary things that we're looking at.
Okay. And do you, I guess you kind of focus on what individuals can do on an individual basis and in their own lives to kind of bring attention to these issues and kind of do what they can?
Mhm.
Is that kind of like how you focus on it, or is it more of like trying to change things like on larger levels at the same
Both
time?
and, you know, if I'm facilitating a training or a workshop, will have a dimension of individual change, but also organizational change. So how to shift things organization wide for sure.
And so, what are some of the social justice projects that you're currently involved in?
Yeah, so on the training realm of things, I'm on the training team for an organization called Race Forward, and I work with a lot of organizations, you know, doing racial justice work there. I'm also a part of a collective of musicians and artists called Amplify Palestine, which, you know, it has existed for several years and whose work has become all the more important in the midst of this ongoing crisis in Gaza, this sort of genocide unfolding, and so what we are focused on is bringing more artists into the cause of Palestinian solidarity. We've been putting out some mixtapes, some compilation albums of artists who support Palestinian rights, and that also involves, you know, both as a part of that collective and just on my own going to a lot of mobilizations with an instrument. I often bring a dole to sort of, again, sort of lift people's spirits, to speak out for human rights in Palestine, and also ending our government's support of the ongoing war in Gaza. That's really funded by our tax dollars. So that's an issue that I've been spending a lot of time working on and thinking about as well.
Okay. And is there anything else that you wanted to explore further, or anything you wanted to add that we didn't cover today that you wanted to make sure that we got to?
I don't think so. I'm really looking forward to the show and hopefully having a great crowd and great vibes and all sort of diving into that feeling of Chardi together for sure.
All right. So it was really great meeting with you.
Me too.
And